Hello and welcome to today's webinar on LTO-8. I'm Bob Cohn and I will be the MC for our webinar today. We always have record attendance when we introduce a new LTO tape technology, and today's webinar is no exception to that rule by any means. I think the reason we have so much interest in the LTO-8 release is because not only are we looking at greater capacity and performance as one would expect, but a lot of technological changes behind this introduction, which give us some interesting new features. And to walk us through all of that, we have Spectralogic's Vice President of Product Management and Sales Engineering, Mr. David Feller. Now, as Dave presents, if you have questions, please use the chat box at the end of the webinar. We will address all of those, time permitting. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to David. Dave, are you with us?
I am, Bob. Thank you very much.
Great. Take it away.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. We are very excited about today's webinar. We've been anxiously looking forward to the launch of LTO-8 for some time now, and as I think the folks that follow the industry know, there are a lot of brand new things going on with LTO-8 that are different, in fact, than the way the roadmap has been progressing over the last few years. This is coming faster. It's an incredibly dense technology, provides incredible cost savings, and in a very unique twist here, provides that cost savings on top of the density from day one. And we're going to talk about some of the new technologies that are on top of LTO-8 that basically let you take advantage of it immediately. And it's really a very exciting time to be in the tape technology world. Continues to be the leader in both cost and density certainly for archive systems. So my name is David and I run product management and all of the field sales engineers worldwide. So we've been talking to customers about this for some time now, and this is our chance to really make public all of the pieces that Spectra is offering. So let's just dive right in. There's a great set of things to go through. So as I think everybody knows, that there is a new tape drive launching that's an LTO-8 tape drive, very similar to what you've seen previously with LTO-7. However, it has a new set of heads in it that allow us to get essentially another doubling in capacity per tape. Along with that, it also comes with higher speed. So this system raw will do up to about 360 megabyte per second. So it's a really fast technology, and because of the way that the tapes are formatted, we can actually read and write off of that tape significantly faster. Again, that's raw, and the compressed capacity, the drive itself has the ability to compress data as you're feeding it data, and if you're feeding data and compressing it, it can also encrypt, but at a compressed rate, we typically use 2.5 to 1 as a typical number. We can actually get up to about 750 megabyte per second out of a single tape drive. So very exciting speeds going forward as well. Lots of new technologies as well. But basically, the announcement is straightforward. The new tape drive, LTO-8 tape drive, along with the new media, the LTO-8 tape itself, is capable now of 12 terabytes native, and again, using that compression ratio, very frequently we're seeing customers able to get 30 terabytes or so on a tape. Obviously, that depends on the compressibility of your data and a variety of other things. The industry is more or less standardized on this 2.5. Certainly capable of more, and depending on your data, it could be less. On the full height drives, you can get up again to about 360 megabyte per second. Half heights aren't quite as fast. They're in the 300 megabyte per second range. It also does automatic speed matching. So one of the first things people ask is, do I have to, from day one, upgrade all of my servers or the HSM software, what it runs on, to feed these drives? And that's not necessary. These drives will speed match to whatever the capability of the software and the server is to feed it, all the way down to around 100 megabyte per second. So a lot of flexibility there in matching whatever you already have, and as you upgrade, your server capability, your software capability, you can certainly feed these at full speed. Everything else is roughly the same from an encryption capability and the fiber channel connection. So if you look at the overall lineup of really what's out there as of basically today, the latest in enterprise, we'll start from the right, the latest in enterprise tape is the 1155. We refer to that in our lineup as a TS series. It's essentially IBM's JAG series of drives. Those current, and we're talking about raw across the board, no, we're not putting the compression in here, work at about 15 terabytes for a single cartridge. On the left side now you'll see LTO-8 very close to it at 12 terabytes. So the 1155 came out in the spring of this year, and a lot of the same technologies are used by IBM to build both of the drives. The 1155 and their enterprise grade has a higher reliability. It has bigger motors. There are definitely reasons in some cases to use an enterprise tape, but for the purposes of capacity and dollars per gigabyte, really nothing beats LTO. That's been a consistent theme across the board. We have many customers that are mixing and matching all three of these technologies in our libraries. The Oracle, as you know, basically has stopped development on their next generation. They were intending to get close to the 1155 numbers, but this D is the last one that they produced. So really the two viable options today are the enterprise grade 1155 or 12 terabyte LTO-8 cartridges. So if you then apply that across the board and take a look at what does that mean for our particular library set, the fascinating thing is every one of our libraries, even the smallest 50 slot entry-level library, is good for over a petabyte. So essentially all libraries now are petabyte capable. The T50 with an uncompressed capacity starts at about 600 terabytes, and as we get up to our largest enterprise dual, multi-robot libraries, the Tfinity, you're actually over an exabyte and a half. You're at 1.6 exabytes is what you can fit in those libraries. So it's really exciting. As capacity is growing and the amount of data stored worldwide is growing, we're right there to take care of you. So the question now is, how does this work? What's different? So it's worth going back a couple generations and talking about, what kind of technologies were used in tape drives going back 2 generations. LTO-6 used GMR heads. They were actually introduced in roughly 2008. That's been used in the disk drive industry for decades, actually. Using a 16-channel head, we were able to write, and again, this was significantly lower capacity. As we get into LTO-7, which released 2 years ago, and I'm going to keep emphasizing that, the gap between LTO-5 and 6 and 6 and 7 was 3 years apiece. This is a new step in getting to LTO-8. We're on a 2-year cycle, so that's really exciting. We'll talk about that more later, and what that means is tape competes with disk as well. But LTO-7 launched an improved GMR head. We actually doubled the number of individual heads that were reading and writing to the tape at the same time, went to 32 channels, and primarily it's that track density that let us double the capacity between 6 and 7. But same problems, frankly, that Oracle ran into. That's about the limit of what you can do with that GMR technology. So the move to LTO-8 is essentially using a brand new head technology. It's called TMR, tunneling magnetoresistive technology, and that has actually been used in the hard drive industry since the early 2000s. It's not brand new, but it takes a little bit of time to transition from one hardware platform, disk, to tape. The fascinating part is it's had a chance to really be proven in that industry. We've worked out, as an industry, we've worked out all the initial launch bugs, and so it's a very, very solid thing that companies like IBM have been making for years and years. It is a huge investment to go to a TMR head technology. In most cases, it requires actually a new fab, and so there's a very large financial investment to get to this technology. But again, it was very well known before we walked into it on the tape side. So 4 times improvement in the signal sensitivity. it actually requires a bit smoother media. The media rides, for lack of better description, rides closer to the head itself. So we need a better produced, a finer media. And so the media that's used on TMR is exclusively barium ferrite, smaller particles. As you go back to some of the older technologies, they were rougher, and those older technologies essentially would damage these new TMR heads. So that's why you see exclusive across the board. It's all barium ferrite media that's used on the head itself. By the way, that is the reason, the primary reason why LTO-8, and I know this has been well announced and everybody's aware of it now, the typical way that the generations work is if I'm using LTO-7, for instance, it would read and write LTO-6 and read LTO-5. So you one back read and write, two back read. With LTO-8, there's a fundamental change, and the fundamental change is it's only compatible backwards one generation with LTO-7, and primarily that's because of the media. We're making absolutely sure that no old media gets into the new drive itself and damages these heads and wears them out prematurely. So that requirement is something that as an industry we've said, hey, it's really critical that we get on this new curve, this new capacity curve, that we solidify a roadmap for 5 more generations, and it needs to be based on this new technology. So we're making a sacrifice in one direction while planning for the future. So it's actually a spectacular trade-off for the industry. The media itself, and we talked about this a minute ago, is exclusively barium ferrite. While you could use either or in some of the middle generations, everything from LTO-8 and onward is exclusively barium ferrite. So better overall product. It's very solid, very similar tape to LTO-7. It is also, if you're not aware, there is a specific advantage in the barium ferrite world, very well marketed, that it's pre-oxidized. So we talked about tape lasting 25, 30 years, and that's completely verifiable. Now these tapes, even in moderate conditions, don't oxidize over time because part of the process before laying down the particles themselves is to pre-oxidize them. So that gives you a better guarantee of longevity, which, as you know, in the archive business is really what it's all about. So there is one new development here, in that the industry has decided to allow essentially a middle format. So LTO-7, as you know, is 6 terabytes on the left, 15 terabytes compressed, but let's just talk raw capacity. So 6 terabytes LTO-7. LTO-8, we've been talking about this morning so far, is 12 terabytes. There's a very unique development that is absolutely spectacular for everybody that already has tape, and especially those people that are already on LTO-7, and that's a new technology we're calling LTO-8 Type M media. So very specifically, there's a new piece of media that you can put in an LTO-8 drive that'll give you 9 terabytes. It happens to be, and we'll talk about where it comes from and how this works, but essentially Spectra has announced you can buy this media from us. It happens to be LTO-7 media that Spectra pre-formats and initializes at our facility and ships out essentially as this new LTO-8 Type M media. So it acts like a piece of LTO-8 media, meaning the drives recognize it as LTO-8, basically. It only works in LTO-8 drives, but you get it for the cost of an LTO-7 piece of media. So normally, and we're going to talk about why that's a huge advantage, but let's just take a look at it real quick. That's a 50% capacity increase from 6 terabytes to 9 terabytes to go to this M8 media. M8, by the way, is the slang, if you will. It's the typically it's the last 2 digits on the barcode that identify that as a very unique piece of media. You'll hear a lot of companies just generically referring to it as an M8 instead of the LTO-8 Type M. So if we do just a generic number, LTO-7 is in about the 0.55 cents per gigabyte kind of list price today. If you take that same price for a cartridge increase that capacity by 50%. If you think about increasing the capacity by 50%, essentially is reducing the overall cost of it by 33%. You'll see how that math works, which is incredible because normally at launch, the newest media, like if we go back a year or 2 years to LTO-7, it came out at a significantly higher price and wasn't necessarily economical from day one. Likewise, the pricing of LTO-8 media has not yet been announced, so we're putting a very vague to be determined on that, but it's going to be likely a little bit more in the dollars per gigabyte range than LTO-7. So M8 provides the very unique option here of an immediate cost savings. It's literally a third cheaper if you look at things from a dollars per gigabyte standpoint. So incredible opportunity to jump in right away. So more capacity, 33% savings, and if you think about it, the issue that most customers walk into is they say, well, it's actually more today to adopt the LTO-8 technology, and there may be reasons why I need that if I'm capacity constrained or I've filled up my library or I don't have enough partitions. There's lots of reasons that you may get forced into a full LTO-8 drive, LTO-8 cartridge right away and then have to do some migration. But in most cases, you're waiting some period of time, sometimes up to a year before the latest technology is on par dollars per gigabyte wise with what I've been using for the last 2 years, LTO-7. That is not the case now. LTO-8 is a very, very unique opportunity because of this intermediate cartridge that's based on an LTO-7 tape that Spectra is converting for you. You can immediately see those cost savings. So essentially, for lack of better terms, this is a very unique time when we can say it's a call to action. If you already are using LTO-7, for instance, or even an LTO-6 technology, buying LTO-8 drives today and buying M8 media today gives you immediate cost savings. There's no math you have to do to try to figure out when the right time is to convert. Frankly, the time is now. So I realize this is a bit of a vague graph. There's no X or Y axes, but if you take a look, this is what most people are faced with. If you go back a number of years, LTO-5 is the orange. When LTO-6 launched, this is a graph in dollars per gigabyte, it was significantly higher dollars per gigabyte, and it actually took about a year before the gray dipped and crossed, and then everybody said, oh, well, now it's the right time to go to LTO-6. The same thing happened between LTO-6 and 7. It actually took almost 18 months. In fact, it wasn't until last quarter where LTO-7 was significantly cheaper dollars per gigabyte than LTO-6. And as you can see, the red line is again an estimation because LTO-8 media pricing has not yet been announced, but it's very likely to be more dollars per gigabyte. The really fascinating thing about the entire graph is the green line. At launch, the new M8 media with an LTO-8 drive is significantly cheaper. Again, a full third cheaper dollars per gigabyte for overall savings. So we're trying to deliver this message to all of our customers that this is a really good opportunity. Another way to think about this is depending on how much media you're buying. Let's pick a random number, 1,000 cartridges a month. If all of a sudden I can start only buying 660 cartridges a month instead of 1,000, I actually have not just the savings, but I may in fact have enough money left over just from purchasing less media to pay for those LTO-8 drives. So there's a definite advantage to jumping in as soon as you possibly can. So what's really going on? Essentially behind the scenes, Spectra is offering this new, we call it a Spectra certified M8 media. So it's our LTO-8 type M media, but it will be fully Spectra certified and go through all of the same processes. And unlike any other vendor in the world, we touch every single tape. We read and write, we do testing, we do statistical analysis, we clean the tape, we label it, there's a whole set of things that we do as part of the Spectra certified media process that already saves you money. More reliable media, it's integrated into our libraries, we check the health of the media, all those things you still get, but now you can order it as M8 media. So before we do all of that process, we actually convert it to that M8 media, make it a 9 terabyte cartridge, and then run through the entire process. So how are we doing it? The drive itself is capable of doing this. It has to be new, unused media before you go through the conversion process. We put the right barcode on it, label it, and make sure that it's fully compatible with the libraries. And again, I know you've heard this 3 times already, but if you walk away and don't understand, 50% more capacity, 33% savings immediately from day one. The only real difference in performance, if you will, from an LTO-8, a full LTO-8 piece of media, and an M8 piece of media, which is the LTO-7 converted 9 terabyte cartridge again, is that it really performs from a read-write standpoint like an LTO-7 cartridge. So it's 300 megabyte per second native instead of the 360 that you'll see from the full piece of LTO-8 media. Once initialized, again, it gets treated by a system, by the ISVs, by the software packages, the HSMs, backup software, whatever. It gets treated essentially as an LTO-8 tape. So that means it only works in LTO-8 drives. You can't put a piece of M8 media in an LTO-7 drive. It will actually reject it and say, incompatible. So that's been worked through drive firmware basically to reject those drives. So you're safe mixing this media within your library. So really excited about the launch of this. And again, there's other folks that have different media programs, but quite frankly, everything else is kind of a farce. We're the only ones that go through an entire test, clean, and a sampling of every single piece of media and make sure that it's up to our standards, which are higher than really anybody else's in the industry. This is the only way to really guarantee flawless media. We're really the only ones that are also offering lifetime guarantee. That includes the new M8 media as well. Lifetime guarantee on that media. Anything goes wrong with it for any reason, we take care of it for you. As part of the announcement in the last couple weeks, it's really exciting that the industry has stepped up and extended the roadmap out through what we call Generation 12 or LTO-8, LTO-12, all the way. And generically, we can't say for certain because there's lots of variables, but the goal of the industry is to accelerate that roadmap. Again, we've been on a 3-year cycle, and we're attempting to get on a 2-year cycle repetitively. There's a big reason for that. It's quite frankly, it's to stay ahead of disk, and to make sure that there's a large enough multiplier between disk and tape that it's a drop-dead simple decision. Tape will remain forever as the most economical, the longest lasting, the best choice for really critical data and for archive. Well, LTO-12 here you can see is projected all the way out to about almost 200 terabytes on a single cartridge, and we live in a world where technology changes at an incredibly rapid pace, but still 200 terabytes on something you can hold in the palm of your hand and will last for 30 years is an absolutely incredible thing that is compelling for everyone in the industry. So it's very exciting that everybody in the industry is stepping up. So what about migration? So this comes up a lot. Oh no, now you're on a 2-year cycle. Does that mean every 2 years I have to copy all of my data over? And that, by the way, is one of the rallying cries of the people saying, tape's old technology, or you need to stick with disks, you don't have this problem. Well, frankly, it's a lie, and it's not true. You don't necessarily have to migrate every generation. As you know, prior to LTO-8, you could read back 2 generations, so there's already plenty of companies that are on a every other generation cycle. There's quite a few companies that completely skipped LTO-7 and are still using LTO-6. It's still very economical. The drives are fully supported. Everything works in the library. Our libraries are capable of supporting multiple types of technology simultaneously. We literally have some customers that have all versions of LTO all the way back to, I think there's one that still has some LTO-1s and 2s. It's one of our government customers that have all of the technologies in the same library. You just essentially keep adding partitions if you want to keep your data separate, and add the new technology. If you find yourself constrained, usually it's a space constraint, because as you know, tape, if you're not actually accessing the data, it uses almost no power, so it's not really a power thing, it's a space thing. But if you run out of space in your library or in your data center and can't actually put another media frame on, because ours are very, very easy to upgrade, fine. Migration is an option, and we offer our professional services consultation and services to actually do that migration for you. A lot of the software packages will do it automatically, but don't feel forced into migration, and don't fall for the line that makes tape not viable because I have to migrate every 2 years. So we're happy to help you through that. We've got folks that have been doing this for years and years and understand with each software package how to do the migration. In fact, we've got a program very specifically to help folks with this transition. So we call it Migration Pass, and if you're upgrading to LTO-8 from any other technology, there's a lot of extra benefits. This is kind of the goodies page. What are we offering to make this even more attractive? Quite frankly, starting down low, for every 2 LTO-8 drives that you buy, you get a free chamber. And our chambers, because we use TeraPacks, again, uniquely in the industry, it's a spectacular thing that lets me move packs of 10 tapes around the library, much, much more efficient than any of our competitors. So you get a free chamber license with every 2 drives purchased. So that's essentially a $1,000 discount for every 2 LTO-8 drives that you buy. And as part of the package, we offer a free 2-hour migration consultation. We'll come on site. We'll evaluate what software you're using, what you have in your library, and happy to talk about A, whether you need to migrate at all, and B, if you need to, how do we do it? And if necessary, we're happy to even contract with you to help you through that migration. As part of the deal, very frequently people are saying, well, I just want to leave my current drives in place and my current media in place. I want to start a new partition. So if you buy LTO-8 drives from us, we'll give you a free partition license. So our SLS license essentially enables all of our libraries to be expanded with multiple partitions, up to 16 in the larger libraries, and you just keep adding. It's a very, very simple thing, and that's part of this upgrade package that we offer. And of course, we offer a trade-in of old drives, depending on the generation, depends on how much you actually get for those trade-ins. Lots of resources available to help you understand more, keep learning. Again, the easiest is, man, just give us a call. We're happy to come by, sit with you, talk through all the possible options. Quite frankly, we are the only company on the planet that offers every tape drive technology out there will work in our library. So we're a bit agnostic. You'll find other companies, saying, well, you need to stay away from enterprises or IBM or any of those things. No. If you need that technology, we have it to offer. If you want LTO-8, we have it to offer. You can even put those T10K drives in our libraries and use those simultaneously in multiple partitions. We're happy to work through that with you. Again, we have these migration services. There's a great booklet that's both downloadable. You can view it on our website, and I think we're going to print a few of these up that go through all of this in detail. A lot more information on charts that show you total capacity of the different drive types and media types. A lot of good information in there. I definitely would recommend hunting down that flip book on our website. You can see our website information there. And again, we have a great staff of system architects that are really happy to come and talk to you about what your particular needs are. So Bob, I think that's the bulk of what we wanted to make everybody aware of today. I've seen a few pings come through that there's questions. Is there anything that you want to take?
Yes, as a matter of fact, first of all, great job, Dave. Excellent overview. Quite a few questions have already come in, and please continue writing them. We've got plenty of time to cover more. So if any questions come up, use that chat box and send them in. I'm going to take these in order, and a couple of were already touched on as you spoke, but I'll go ahead and bring up each one of them. Very early on, it says your slide quotes 750 megabyte per second on performance with 2.5 to 1 compression. Wouldn't that performance be closer to 900 megabyte per second?
900, yeah. I've actually seen that published out there, some other folks talking about 900 megabyte per second. It's really funny. Anybody that really understands this technology, there are other limiters besides just the drive and the compression, so it's kind of funny that got published at 900. I saw that out there. That's frankly just irresponsible. You actually have other limits like the fiber channel speed itself limit your total capability today to about 750. So while the back-end system is certainly capable of faster speeds, overall that it's an unrealistic number. 750 is the real number that you should be counting on.
Okay, great. Let's see, next in line, can M8 be used with all LTO-8 drives? In other words, if I use Black Pearl, this is obviously a Spectra customer, and down the road decide to move my library to another system, can these tapes still be read? So I guess, in essence, for everyone on the line, the question is, with the M8 media and LTO-8 drives, if you're working with any of the Spectra libraries or solutions, could you still read those in other LTO-8 drives, maybe by IBM or some other vendor?
That makes sense. So is it universal or is it unique to Spectra? And they mentioned Black Pearl and the library. So there's 2 or 3 pieces to this. The library itself needs to be capable of supporting LTO-8. So you need a version of software for the library that understands what LTO-8 is. You need a version of your, we generically refer to it as the ISV. It may be a backup package, Commvault Veeam, whatever. It may be a data mover. It needs to be aware of LTO-8 in general, and we have an extensive program to qualify each of the software packages with LTO-8. But the M8, as is Black Pearl, it's fully qualified with both LTO-8 and M8. M8, however, is a universal standard that will work in any of the LTO-8 drives sold anywhere in the world. So if you write as M8, they mentioned Black Pearl, if you happen to write it with Black Pearl or with Commvault or Veeam or anything else, and you happen later to take that tape and put it in some other library, as long as it's an LTO-8 drive and the software package that you're using is cognizant of LTO-8, it will be able to read that and use that M8 cartridge because it's treated like an LTO-8 cartridge.
Fantastic. Now, similar, talking about some other vendors out there, do IBM and Oracle products go through the same pre-oxidation process? I like that as a selling point. Everyone likes added longevity.
The pre-oxidation process, it's part of the media itself. So yes, any barium ferrite cartridge, so LTO-7, LTO-8, and some LTO-6 was barium ferrite, and all of it is pre-oxidized. I wish I could claim that was unique to Spectra. It's not. It's part of the media technology itself.
Okay. Now this one you already answered, but it came in right before you started hitting those slides, so maybe just a little recap. It says, if we moved to LTO-8, how would we recover data from our LTO-5 tapes if the data was needed for restore purposes?
Well, right. So the easiest is leave an LTO-7 drive in the library. Assuming you don't actually want to move the data, you just want to be able to read it for some period of time. Essentially, you put those LTO-5 cartridges, because LTO-7 can read back to 5. You put them in a partition with LTO-7 drives, and essentially you say, I'm not going to write any more LTO-5. All new writes go to LTO-8, but I can still read back, and as long as your ISV software is intelligent enough, it will know I can load LTO-5 and LTO-7 drives. That's how I get the data back off of those. If you choose to migrate, that's a whole different discussion, but it's not as hard as people might make it out to be, but migration is an option too.
And then in a situation where we maybe have a customer who's currently working with LTO-5, they have not upgraded to 6 or 7, and they want to go to 8, it would basically be the same answer, right? They just leave some of those existing LTO-5 drives behind in a dedicated partition and use that as a restore partition and use all the new write partitions as LTO-8 or the newer technology.
Oh, exactly. Very frequently we're actually selling LTO-7 drives into that situation as well. A little bit more reliability, a little faster speed as well. So you can either leave your LTO-5 drives in, 5, 6. You can put some LTO-7s just for the purpose of reading, and we've got a great, essentially a refurb, recondition program. You can get essentially used LTO-7 drives if all they're going to do is be reading. So that option exists as well.
Okay, great. And this is stimulating quite a few questions coming in here. So the next one is, if we aren't forced to upgrade, why was I told our current LTO-4 tape drives will no longer be supported after December 2018? So that's someone's gotten a notification that their LTO-4 tape drives won't be supported after the end of, I guess, next year.
Right, right. So LTO-4, I'd have to calculate that in the back of my head, but we're going back, what, 12 years, 10 years, 12 years? So there's definitely an end of life to overall support, but 4, again, is readable by LTO-6, and if you look at what the time frames are, you know, from a, if LTO-4 is end of lifing, you know, next year, you shouldn't expect LTO-6 to end of life for another 5 to 6 years, right? Because it's a very consistent, how long do we keep old technologies around? At some point, you get to the point where you say, well, there aren't even parts available to service things that are, you know, 10, 12, 14 years old. And so we need to move to new technology. But even LTO-4 has another 5 or 6 years before, you know, it's not readable by things that are supported. So there's plenty of time there to worry about what's that migration strategy. I think in the tape industry, we talk about the tapes lasting 30 years. We talk about the drives themselves. You should count on, you know, 10 to 15 being able to read that tape at least with a supportable technology. And so that means about every 15 years, you ought to think about whether it's time to migrate to something new. And again, coming from LTO-4, you're going to fit an awful lot of LTO-4 cartridges. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but what is that, 12 or more cartridges that you can fit on an LTO-7 or 8. So you get an incredible cost savings as well by doing a quick migration.
And you know, just from this question and your answer, I could come up with about 4 or 5 more questions. So I think that's why it's really important for anyone considering this to reach out to, for example, our professional services, to have that conversation and talk about really what they're trying to achieve and talk about all the different ways they could go at it.
Yeah, there's no, unfortunately with this topic, there's no single answer that applies to everybody. We really need to understand, what's the value of your data? Do you even know what it is? You know, do you have space? Do you have an ability to migrate? Do we need to do it manually? Is there some automatic process? Everyone's pretty unique and takes expertise, and quite frankly, we're definitely willing to lend that to you.
Great. All right, we'll keep going here. Is the read back 2 generations, write back 1 generation expected to return with LTO-9?
So that has not been announced yet. There are a variety of reasons why that could be a thing going forward, is 1 generation back. That's something that we're working on with IBM, very specifically on what are those requirements and what trade-offs do we need to make as an industry. I think that's something we'll talk about probably over the next year, because some of that next generation technology, quite frankly, hasn't even been developed yet. It's in process, in works, but it's going to take a little time to try to understand those trade-offs. And I'd say by this time next year, you should be getting good information on what the next generation looks like.
Great. Okay, about 3 or 4 more, unless we get more coming in here. Can the Type M tape be formatted by end users? So is this something you could do at home?
That's the intention, but the actual application of that is much harder than you might imagine. The library itself has to be understanding of it if you don't want it to happen automatically. So that would imply that you need library upgrades, and this is across the board, whether it's us or IBM or any of the other vendors. And there are some pretty tight restrictions on which tapes can be upgraded or not. So I'd say that's a variable question that's still to be answered by a lot of technology that underlies the announcement from the consortium, which is why Spectra said, you know what, that's too much uncertainty, that's too hard. Quite frankly, everybody is making this too hard. If you want it, you can buy it as M8 directly from us from day one at the time when LTO-8 tapes and, or excuse me, LTO-8 drives start shipping. You'll be able to buy these M8 tapes. We're trying to simplify the whole process. And if you happen to have a bunch of Spectra certified LTO-7 lying around, which is rarely the case, by the way, but if you do, we're happy to work with you, whether we help you convert those or we offer a, some sort of a trade-in, where there's all kinds of options where just give us a call and we'll figure out how to help you. We won't leave you stranded.
So if they do have Spectra certified LTO-7 media that's still new, that hasn't been used yet, definitely reach out to your sales rep, and we'll get you in touch with our field engineering department, and we'll get that figured out. Great. Okay, when do you expect pricing for LTO-8 tape? Not the M, but the LTO-8.
Yeah, sure. So that hasn't been announced yet by the media vendors, and I'm certainly not in a position to deliver the price or the exact date. All I can do is let's go back to when LTO-7 launched and talk about how that worked. Generically, it launched in the same time frame of the year. We were basically saying drives, LTO-7 drives were available in this November roughly time frame. It took until the end of the year the last time. It took until late December, early January before, well, quite frankly, two things happened. The media itself was readily available and fully priced, and all of the different software packages, the backup software and such, were qualified with LTO-8. So if you look back historically, it took another month and a half. We just can't make any promises at all where we're going to be on the LTO-8, but that's probably a good rule of thumb to use, and we'll just watch our website. I guarantee you the day that the pricing comes out and the availability comes out, it'll be posted on our website. So we're a great source of information for you.
All right. Can you give me an MSRP, manufacturer suggested retail pricing for LTO-8 drives?
I think we need you to contact your sales people. I don't have that off the top of my head. I apologize.
And I assure you they specialize at it, so
yep, they know it off the top of their head.
Reach out, they'll quote you today. All right, around the can a type M tape be formatted in the field questions, he mentioned that other companies have published this and it will be allowed by others.
Yes.
It's kind of a statement. Does that make sense to you, Dave?
Yeah, generically. So the drive itself, it's probably worthy of a whole discussion on its own. The drive itself is capable, and essentially what happens is you, with the latest LTO-8 firmware for the drive itself, you basically inserted the table into it so that it understands M8. So you have to enable it. Then when you choose format, it will essentially give you the option of either formatting it as if you put an LTO-7 cartridge in, it'll let you format it either as an LTO-7 6 terabyte or as an M8 9 terabyte. Initialize the tape. So how that actually happens is a bit complicated. We absolutely will support that. I think the issue is it worth training users and customers on how that works and how to make it work with your library, or do you put the drive in an automatic state where if it sees an LTO-7 and it follows the virgin rules, if you will, go ahead and make it 9 terabyte. There's just so much uncertainty about how that's really going to work in an individual end user. I think it's the only option for pretty much everybody else in the industry, because they don't have a Spectra, a certified tape program where they're essentially touching all the tapes anyway. So everybody else is working on this default with, well, we're going to have to do it in the field, or we're going to have to take care of it this other way, because they don't have another option. And that's what's really unique to Spectra, is we have a way from day one to give you that M8 cartridge. So we're just, again, we will support field upgrades as they are allowed by the consortium, but the easy way is just order the tapes. And again, we're selling them for essentially the same price as LTO-7 tapes. We charge a small fee for the initialization of the labor to do it, but basically you get it for the price of LTO-7, so there's really no downside to just ordering it from Spectra.
All right, and we've still got a couple of questions coming in, so I'll fire them out. Will standard cleaning tapes work in LTO-8 drives, or is there a newer cleaning tape needed?
No, same tapes. Same tapes will work, which sounds contrary because we talked about the tape essentially writing closer to the heads and the heads being a little bit more sensitive. But same cleaning tapes, you load them up, they're standard LTO, and they'll work in these drives as well.
And I guess that is kind of the trick of a cleaning media anyway, is that it is slightly corrosive. That's how it cleans off the head, if I have that understanding correct.
Yeah. You don't really want to run it every day. You want to run it when the drive says it needs it, and then it's time you need to basically, sounds crude, but scrape it off.
Okay. Down to two last questions. Are Type M media tapes capable of LTFS format?
Yes, absolutely.
With LTFS?
No changes with LTFS. So there is a new, that's a whole other discussion. There is a new LTFS driver that's being made available, but that has nothing to do, it's still, there is no change to how drives can lay down data on the tapes themselves. Full LTFS, it's fully compatible between vendors. There is a new version of that, 2.4, that's being released roughly the same time frame. It's actually it's a coincidence that it happens to be coming out at the same time as LTO-8, but the big benefit with the new driver is it allows special characters. So as I think a lot of people know, LTFS really didn't like things like colons and apostrophes and such, so we escaped those out, and the new driver lets you write just about anything you want onto a tape. So much more compatible, like writing to a disk drive.
Beautiful. Okay, here's a fun question. What is the best argument you can give, apart from the straight dollars per gigabyte, against the growing number of object storage solutions available?
Against can you read that again?
Yeah, what's the best argument you can give for, I guess, continuing to use tape versus using an object storage solution? So maybe just a sentence or two about what object storage is for anyone who might not be familiar with that, and why do you still position tape against that, or could you do it with it?
So yeah, that's a very interesting question. From our, apologize, I had to think about it a minute. From our point of view, tape is just as valid as a standalone archive system with, for instance, a backup piece of software. We're fully qualified with Commvault, Veeam, quite a few others, NetBackup, that understand inherently how to write directly to our tape libraries. And that's certainly one workflow that isn't going away in the near future. It's something that everybody needs, is just core backup for their IT systems. The bulk majority of what we would call value data is moving into this world for object storage. It's essentially saying, I don't necessarily care that I get my entire computer back up exactly like it was. I don't need a true bare metal restore all the time, but I may have a very valuable piece of data. For instance, this PowerPoint that we presented today, when LTO-9 launches, 2 years from now, I'm going to want to go back and pull this PowerPoint, because there's going to be some stuff I'm going to want to compare and see, well, what did we say 2 years ago? Well, that's a prime kind of a thing to drop into an object store. I don't care where it was. I don't care what drive it was on, but that thing has value to me, and I want to be able to get it back. So the beauty of an object store is it can just as easily use tape on its back end or disk. Most of the rest of the world is focusing on object stores for disk. Our Black Pearl solution does all of that, plus has a fully integrated tape solution on the back end as well. So you can actually say, hey, I want a copy on disk, I want a copy on tape, and I want to drop a copy in the cloud in Amazon, and we take care of all of that for you with a single appliance. And nobody else in the world does that, the true integration of tape and object storage together in a single device.
So you really wouldn't argue against object storage versus tape. You would say if you want these certain attributes of tape, you can also have them as an object store simply written to tape. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Backup's not going away, but object store is the future for protecting valuable individual pieces of data and archiving it in a way that you can get it back individually without having to restore the whole thing. So that's certainly part of our core strategy at Spectra.
Okay, so and this is a kind of a reiteration, but it's a slightly different question. Can you reformat a used LTO-7 to LTO-8 if you take the path to install the database into the LTO-8 drive and perform this task yourself? Kind of big to unpack. And then it finishes with, is the rule the LTO-7 has to be new? And it's my understanding that the LTO-7 tape has to be new. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a rule laid down by the consortium. So it has to be a new, unused tape to qualify for giving it this 9 terabyte format.
Okay, and last one, I think, unless we get some more.
You said that 3 times, Bob.
I know, there's been quite a bit of conversation going on here. Why are compressed data rates quoted when the data is decompressed when it leaves the tape drive for the server? So I think there was maybe some confusion about, you mentioned the back end, I believe it's the fiber channel switch or the fiber channel chip on the drive. Could you just maybe clear that up a little bit about why that that decompression of 2.5 to 1 doesn't hold to give us the 900 megabyte per second?
Yeah, sure. So essentially there is a piece of hardware on the drive itself that can do encryption and compression. So you can actually encrypt on the fly as well. We didn't talk extensively about that. But essentially the limiter for the overall speed of the system, there's a couple here. One is how fast can I actually write bits onto the tape itself. So if I'm achieving 2.5 to 1 compression, for instance, I need to feed, and let's just take round numbers. Let's say I could write to the tape at 100 megabyte per second. It's clearly more than that, but let's round up. So that means to be able to write 100 megabytes compressed, I need to be able to feed that tape drive over the fiber channel 250 megabyte per second. So that it could compress and then write the resultant 100 megabyte per second out. So that's the 2.5 to 1. In this particular case, the fiber channel itself, an individual fiber channel really is only capable with all of the overhead and things that go on with networking. The good comparison is, you know, a gigabit Ethernet or a 10 gig Ethernet running TCP/IP. You don't really get a full 10 gigabit per second. There's overhead to the system. There's verifications, things that are going on Ethernet. Same thing happens on, or similar thing happens on fiber channel. There's a limit to how much data I can actually pump through that that pipe. So the limiter then becomes the pipe of how fast can I feed data to the drive. It just so happens that these drives are fast enough, they can write data out to the tape fast enough that it's actually faster than you could feed it through that fiber channel. So again, you know, it's capable of more, and there's probably ways to get a little bit faster, but essentially we always talk to the customer about realistic numbers, not the marketing hype, but what can you actually get with your system talking to that drive, talking to that tape. And so that's why the 750 is a very common number that we use.
All right, outstanding both presentation and Q&A session, David. Thank you very much. We made it with 6 minutes to spare. For everyone who's joined today, or anyone who registered and wasn't able to join, you'll all get a link to the recording of this. If you have any other questions, please reach out to us at spectralogic.com, and we will look forward to the next time. Thanks, everybody.